I'm Megan, and thanks for joining me on my channel. If you're not subscribed already, please do. I release a new video typically every Saturday morning. Today's is a somatic practice that I call slide and glide for the girdles. The girdles being the pelvic girdle and the shoulder girdle. And it's a great one if you have any pain anywhere along the spine, neck, low back, even the center of the spine, because it works with the muscles of the entire torso, particularly targeting the side body muscles, which sometimes when we have pain all the way in the shoulder, or even referred pain down to, say, the knees, it can have something to do with our torso. And you might notice this in your own body next time you're looking in a mirror. If you have your head slightly tilted to one side, or one shoulder drops, or one hip is lifted, one leg is longer. So in somatics, we refer to that as the trauma reflex. So working through the torso, these are some really good movements to free up that whole area and hopefully make you feel more comfortable in your own bodies. So we'll be lying down today, and you may want a blanket or a pillow underneath your head. We'll start by coming down on the left side. We're going to be doing some side-lying, lovely side-lying positions. So if you are patting your head, and you don't need to, if you're comfortable just dropping it all the way down, please do. Just be cautious that you're not lifting your head so high that that right side of the neck is short. So more of a neutral position. So it feels like both sides of the neck are the same length. And then you're just going to slide your knees together. If you find that it's uncomfortable to just let them fall, feel free to also put a blanket between the knees, at least for now while we work on the shoulders. So the first thing we're going to do is drop our right arm to our side and think of the shoulder girdle as going from the outer shoulder all the way to the center of the sternum, or think of your collarbone, that's your brake strut in the front, and then the back side, your shoulder blade. Those are your bony landmarks. So take a moment just in your mind's eye to picture your right collarbone and your shoulder blade. And then we're going to take the front of the shoulder and bring it towards the collarbone, and then release it, and then take the back of the shoulder towards all the way towards the spine or towards your shoulder blade, and then release it. So what we're doing is just going back and forth. And take a few of those. You're going to come forward and release, and back and release. And if you're used to my somatic yoga, the yoga part is that we do it to the breath. So you would inhale and bring it forward. Exhale, release to the space of grace. Inhale, bring it back. And release to the space of grace. What we want to check is that we're not using our arm to make this movement. We're using these muscles in the upper shoulder. Do one more back and forth. See how far you can go. Go beyond your normal range of motion. And then the next one, we'll think of our ear and think of your right hip. And you can do it to your breath. Inhale and draw your shoulder up towards your ear, so top of the shoulder, the right side of the neck will get short. And then release. And then inhale and think of taking your armpit down towards your hip. Top of the shoulder will stretch. You'll tighten underneath and let go. Do a few of those. So you're just sliding your shoulder. Before it was back and forth. Now it's up and down. Be sure to give yourself that squeeze if you're doing it on the inhale, and the complete release. We're not pulling the arm right into the next position. That's really important. You want to do the do part and then do the don't part. Just let go. And going back and forth. Now that we found all 4 of those spaces, sliding the shoulder, begin to glide it in circles. So now you can come forward, up, back, and down. You may feel some stickiness when you do this. I know I do. So go smoothly and slowly through those sticky patches. Sometimes we try to skip out. And again, check that it's not your elbow and your arm making this movement. We're truly moving from the shoulder girdle. And what happens is when you're moving from your shoulder girdle, you're noticing the muscles in the torso and the side of the torso, the front around the collarbone, the back around the shoulder blade. You can go both directions. This is another one I often do in bed in the morning. Just roll over onto my side and then let your right shoulder relax. So we're going to go into the hip now. And if you think of your hip being able to do the same thing that your arm just did, it will. So picture it first. So the first movement will be we'll slide the right hip forward, and then we'll release it. And then we'll slide the right hip back and release it. So you can even put your hand there. Imagine if you had a handle on your hip, if that helps. Sometimes it's hard to find the torso muscles to help us to do this. So really focus on the bones of your pelvis. And on the other hand, if you just can't get it to move, go ahead and push your knee forward once and notice what it feels like to move from the leg, and then draw your knee back. Also being cautious not to lift the weight of the leg and slide it. I'm just moving from my hip. Think of the inner thighs gently sliding, or maybe you've got a pillow between there. Back and forth with the hip. Notice when things tighten in the front side, when they tighten in the back side, and what stretches. One more back and forth with that right hip, just sliding. And then we'll stop. So now we'll do just like with the shoulder, we'll do an up and down. So picture your hip, you can even touch it. You can touch the top of the hip bone there, that ASIS point. Imagine you've got a little string there. And as you breathe in, draw that top hip towards your armpit. So you're going to draw it upward or towards your ear, and then release it. And then think of the bottom of your hip or your buttocks and push it towards your feet, towards the front of your mat, and release. So this one too can be interesting because we're trying to do the movement from that top hip. So what you might think about it as when the hip is going away from your body, lengthening, really lift the waist. Lift your low waist, lift your rib cage even perhaps, and then release it down. And then you might think of drawing the top of the hip towards your armpit as you pull it back. The other side of that is if we're moving more from the bottom hip doing this, you'll feel yourself try to lift the bottom waist. So can you feel the difference between lifting the top waist to lengthen the right waist versus lifting from the bottom, even though the bottom will shorten? And then also draw that right hip towards your armpit without pushing down into the bottom waist. So these are just different ways to feel or create the same motion and feel it differently. And now that we found both of those, begin to take your hip in circles. What I often see is the whole leg starts to go like this, like a happy dog or something, right? So the leg is staying relaxed. Let your right thigh bone be heavy, and really, even though it may feel like it's limiting your mobility, what you're doing is you're gaining mobility in the torso by not moving your hip from your leg. So the leg is relaxed and heavy. Take that handle and take your hip around in circles. Smooth it out. Any rough patches, go even slower. Then you can go the opposite direction. You might see how this is really nice to do in bed in the morning. Take a few breaths as you're going around, or notice your breath. Is it comfortable? No catches in the breath. And then we'll stop and let the hip relax. So that's our sliding and circling. And now we're going to do a little bit more with gliding. We are going to add the arm and leg in. But now we know we can move from our hip and our torso and our shoulder. So now you're going to breathe in and think of your whole center waist. And as you breathe in, lift your right waist up. Lift the rib cage. And as you breathe out, just let the bottom ribs fall to the ground. So moving more from the center now. Do a few of those to start. Lift up and release down. So think of taking the shoulder and the hip away from one another and then releasing. So find this movement once again from the torso first. My arm and leg are relaxed. And then once you notice that you can move from your torso, feel how long the right side body gets, feel the contraction through the left side body or the shortening. Then we can add arm and leg. So as you're breathing in, lifting the waist, maybe you want to reach your arm and your leg. They can be lifted or touch the floor. And then exhale, let it go. But initiate still from the waist and just let the arm and leg create a little more length and a little more space. You might even hold it there for a few breaths. Take some breaths into your right lung because it's very spacious. It likes this position. And a complete release. Make the right side of the body as long as you can, all the way from the fingers to the toes. Notice how the left side is short. And release. Let's do one more lengthening out the right waist. You might even add your neck just a little bit if you want to lengthen the neck. You can slightly press the area just above the left ear into the ground, or think of tilting the head. And release that. Now we're going to go the opposite. We're going to shorten the waist. So this one I actually like to do an exhale on an exhale if you're using your breath. You don't have to, but when we put it together, it'll make more sense. So I'm going to think of my hip and my armpit. Visualize that area in your right side. And then as you breathe out, bring the hip and the armpit near each other without reaching too much through the hand. Let the arm stay relaxed. Breathe in and release. So now you'll notice how your left waist and rib cage might be sticking into the ground. The right side is shortening. So if it's not uncomfortable for your neck, we can add the neck into this one. So when we exhale and shorten the right side, you can lift the head up. So the right side of the neck is shortening along with the waist. And then we inhale, release down. We can also add just a little bit more width by using the leg and the arm like we did with the extension. So as you exhale, bring the hip and the armpit towards each other. Maybe lift the head and reach with your hand and think of bringing your thigh bone towards you just a little bit. So shorten that side. If you are, I just caught myself, if you are lifting your head, watch that you're not in head forward syndrome. What's sometimes helpful is take your hand to the base of the skull, press your skull into your hand until it feels like your neck is in a neutral position, so we're not nose looking down at the thighs. You shouldn't be able to see your thighs. You should be looking straight ahead and come down. Shorten the waist. Lift the head. I have to remind myself to keep my head neutral, not look at the knees or the thighs, and release. One more time. Notice how strong those side body muscles can be, even through your neck. Let go. Now let's put that together. So as you breathe in, you're going to lift your waist, start from there. Maybe add the arm and leg lengthening. Take that big full breath into the right side. And then I like to breathe out and completely relax. Then I'm going to take another breath in, and on my next breath out, lift up and shorten the waist. And release. So find your pattern. If you want to do one breath for movement, you could inhale and exhale. Back and forth. So if you just feel like you just need to get more bang for your buck, sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't by moving more. It's not always the case with somatics that the more you do, the greater the progress or the greater the healing. I like that rest state, so I usually come here. But you can reach, get that right waist as long as you can, open up your armpit, stretch the outer hip, let go. And then shorten it as much as you can. And let it go. Take yourself through one more round if you'd like. I think I will. Notice how important those torso muscles are. And let go. So before we leave this entirely, remember how we started with the slides and the circles? See if you can slide and circle the hip and the shoulder simultaneously in any way you want. Get that freedom of movement, hip and shoulder circling around. They can go in the same direction. That's part of the brain. The brain gets involved if you say, I want to go in the same direction. And then tell your brain that you want them to go in opposite directions, and that can be very interesting. It's all about gaining control of the muscles. And I laugh only because I know that I find it comforting in my own practice to be able to laugh when my brain does this like this Scooby-Doo sound and it doesn't know what I want it to do next. Because eventually it figures it out. But I know that's the learning moment. When it's not sure what I'm doing and it's paying attention and trying to figure it out. All right, and then relax for a moment. Before we flip to the other side, I'd like you to just roll onto your back. Whatever's comfortable, you can keep feet on the floor or take your legs long. This is our pause for the magical moment. Just pause and feel the two sides of your body. From the right toes to the fingers, or maybe just focusing on the torso and the waist. And the left side, toes to fingers, or just the torso and waist. Seeing how they feel for you right now. Is there any difference in the two sides, or just a difference of awareness? Is your right shoulder blade heavier or lighter than your left shoulder blade? Or notice the way the weight is resting in the back of your pelvis, your pelvic bones. Are they touching the floor equally, does it seem like? Or is there a tilt to your pelvis? You're just noticing the way your legs are laying in your arms. And then we'll get ready to do the second side. So you're welcome to just turn on to your right side. I got to do a little turnaround here, as I officially call it, a flip and a flop. Bringing my pillow with me. Just like you're crawling back into bed. So find that comfortable spot. Remember, you can invite yourself to put a blanket or something little between the knees as well. Let your left arm be heavy. Just feel yourself first from the left shoulder girdle, so you can even touch your collarbone. So when I say bony landmarks, if they're not popping into your brain through imagery, then touch them, right? Feel your collarbone. Feel your shoulder blade. That's really the nuts and bolts of your shoulder girdle and all the muscles around there. And let the arm relax. And we'll start with the forward and release and the back and release. So think like you're trying to touch the front of the shoulder to the collarbone. You'll feel tightening through the pectoral area and a nice stretch through the upper back. Let that go. And then just the opposite. Feel your upper back tighten, all the muscles around the shoulder blade. Nice stretch around the collarbones. If you're doing it to your breath, the effort is on the inhale and the release on the exhale. I just like to pattern my movement to the breath because the breath is one of the indicators that we feel safe in our bodies, that we're comfortable. If our breath is smooth, then we won't know that our nervous system is relaxed. Just playing with that range of motion back and forth, sliding the shoulder gracefully. Go for smooth. Every now and then check the rest of the body. Make sure you're not. I just noticed I was holding tension in my neck and my jaw, so let that go. Now we'll switch and go the opposite direction. So you can think of your ear. You're going to be tightening the muscles in the side of the neck and the top of the shoulder as you bring the shoulder up. And I'm not using my arm to do it. I'm doing my best to keep the arm heavy. Think of the top of the shoulder shortening, Feel the muscles in the upper back, and then release. And then think of sliding the armpit towards your hip. You'll feel the side of the neck stretch, the top of the shoulder. Let that go. So the shoulder, the girdles, I think of as the two ends of the torso. So we start by moving from the two ends of the torso, particularly the shoulder right now. And squeezing up or sliding up and releasing. You can do either. You can slide and release, or think of it more as a squeeze. Really go all the way to your end range of motion. Tighten those muscles. Let them go. And when I say end range of motion, usually it's beyond our typical end range of motion. That's what we want to do. Go a little bit further, as long as you're comfortable. Last one. And then put those together. So start to circle the shoulder. Check to see your arm isn't trying to take control. Keep the arm heavy and relaxed. The arm is just extending out from the torso. Full circle all the way around. You might notice how you feel it in the side of the neck, particularly if you're a person who holds any sort of tension in your neck. You have the ability to go both directions. Just need to tell your brain to switch. All the way around. Find that freeing circle through the left shoulder. And let the left shoulder relax, let the arm relax. Just pausing for a moment. And we'll be going into the right hip. So the hip can basically do the same movements as the shoulder. So we'll start with the forward glide. So you're tilting your pelvis, the top left hip forward. And then release. And then tilt it back. Release. If it helps, you'll see I keep my hand on my hip. I'm not pushing it with my hand, but I imagine pushing it with my hand so I know that I'm moving from my hip, not sliding the leg. And if you're not sure, if you don't know if the hip movement is coming from your hip or your leg, go ahead and move from your knee. Push your knee forward and pull it back. Notice what muscles you feel when you do that, and then see if you can use the muscles in your buttocks to pull back versus pushing your knee. So it's all an exploration. Finding different ways to create the same movement. Checking to see you're not lifting the leg up too. And if you are because it's uncomfortable, remember the option of putting a blanket between your knees or a pillow. Can you start to feel when the low waist muscles get involved with this movement? I really like this one. This is my grumpy side of my sacrum. Maybe you've done my video, my grumpy sacrum before. So it enjoys this stretch coming forward and then that tightening coming back. What are some of your favorite movements that seem to really fit your body? And then let's do the opposite. Pause for a moment. So now we'll be going up and down. So think of your top of your left hip. You can even touch it. Find your hip with your hand. Use your hands as your tools. And draw the hip toward your armpit. When you do that, you'll feel your right waist pressed into the ground. And then release it. And then think of taking the left hip towards your feet or towards the front of the mat. You're going to lift your right or left waist up and right waist. The lift from the left. And let it go. Just finding the back and forth first. Maybe doing it to your breath. Effort on the inhale. Release on the exhale. So we find the 4 basic movements. It's like north, south, east, and west. Those are your slides. And then once you feel you found those, because sometimes one's a little trickier than the other, then start to circle it. Glide the hip, that whole left hip, all the way around, really slow. See how much you can let your waist muscles and the muscles in the buttocks, even the front of the abdomen, make this movement. The leg is relaxed. And I notice right away, as soon as I move from my hip, there's a sense of my head wanting to respond. If I move from the leg, my neck kind of locks up. And you can go both directions. Let's see what you can notice. You know, if you start to kick your leg around, how does your body respond? That's a totally different thing. Not that it's bad, versus really just rolling that hip and using all those lovely waist muscles. Finish up your circles here with the left hip. And relax. So now we're going to take it that step further with the arm and the leg if you'd like. I'll start with the upper body. So I'm still going to lift, but I'm going to do it now on an inhale. If you want to think of breathing into your left lung, you can even place your hand there. I don't even have to use my muscles. I can sense how when I breathe in to my left lung, it floats up. So that's the effortlessness that we like to find. But then I might just do a little bit of muscular energy to help that float. You can feel the right side contract now, and then release down. Moving from the center of the torso, and you can imagine your left hip and shoulder are going in opposite directions, stretching away from one another, and then releasing. If you want to add the arm just to get a little longer, then stretch away, and you can also add the leg, reach arm and leg. Maybe take a few breaths into that left side. Exhale, let it completely relax. If you've never tried initiating movement with your breath, this is a really good one to start with, and particularly teaching us how to breathe into one lung. Yeah, we have that ability. You can put your hand there. Imagine your left lung filling like a balloon, and it lifts it like helium, lifts the bottom waist off the ground, and then your arm and leg respond and create even more of that luscious space through your left side. And releasing completely. Let's do one more. Feel the way, you can even imagine all the way into the spine. The muscles, the little tiny muscles on the side of the spine in the left are getting long. The right side, they're compressing. Let it go. And now let's do from the center of the torso, the hip and the shoulder coming towards each other, the two girdles. So I like to do this one on exhalation, and you can think of squeezing the waist short, that left waist, and then release. So exhale. You can even draw your lower abdominal muscles in a little bit and release. Option to bring the head into it, but if you're bringing the head in, check to see if you can see your knees, then you know you need to lift your chin up. Take the base of the skull so it's more in line with your sacrum, and lift straight up, so not that head forward. You want to really get into the muscles in the side of the neck, and if we have the head forward, we're actually using the muscles more in the back of the neck, which they generally get plenty of strain if we already have head forward. So feel those muscles in the side of the neck. Exhale. You can hold it for a few breaths. Option to bring a little bit of leg and arm in. Reach the arm towards your feet and draw the thigh bone towards your belly button, towards your navel center. Shorten as far as you can go comfortably. And release. Exhaling. And releasing. If you have, like I do, a side of the neck where you tend to hold more tension, you might be feeling that now. So it may be that you lift the head on one side and not the other. So for me, it might be more appropriate. This is my side where I hold tension in that left side of the neck. I would just let it stay down unless I can make sure it's releasing on the way down. So let's put these two together now. So inhaling, let the ribs lift up towards the sky, the left ribs, the right waist shortens. You can exhale and release. Take a full round of breath to relax in the space of grace. And then exhale, opposite direction. And release. Or if you're going faster, then it might be one breath, one movement. Inhale into the extension. Exhale. Shorten, contract. So the somatic part takes you away from a sense of the yoga flow where you have to find correct alignment and you have to be doing certain movements to the inhale and certain to the exhale for the most part. So really just exploring the breath as that bridge between body and mind, to know that if you feel comfortable in your body, your breath is smooth, and you're saying nice things to yourself, then it's a beneficial practice. And then you decide what pace works for you. Take one more round if you'd like. That lovely left lung. All right, and then back onto the side, and now let's see if we've got that independent suspension of the girdles. So you can roll the shoulder and the hip simultaneously, and they can go in the same direction or opposite directions. And let your waist muscles have a nice little dance. So I'm not forcing things now with my arm or my leg. Might even feel those muscles in the spine. You can switch the direction of the circles for one or both. Close your eyes. If you're still watching me, close your eyes. Feel the relationship of your left shoulder and your left hip and all that juiciness in between. And then come to a still point. Please feel free to roll onto your back. We'll finish up with just a short moment to gather information of your body, legs long or knees bent. Noticing where you are, where the weight's resting in your legs, anything touching the ground, perhaps your calves. And then sense your pelvis, the lower girdle, the bottom of your torso. If you need to shake your legs out or anything, do that so you can really completely let the pelvis feel grounded, supported by the earth underneath it. Is there more weight in one buttocks than the other? Does one hip feel higher or lower? Just sensing, not because there's a right or wrong, but you're finding this space inside of you. And make your way up through the spine, the low back, the center of the spine. As you do so, think of all of the muscles in and around the spine, the sides of the waist, even the front of the abdomen. As you get into the upper back, we come back into the shoulder girdle, the other end of the torso. Noticing the way your shoulder blades are resting on the ground. Even the weight of your arms. Feel your natural curve in the neck. And just sensing your head, jaw relaxed, eyes soft, falling towards the skull. Soaking up all the information you can in this moment of what it feels like to be present inside of your body. And most of us are very appreciative when someone else gives us a compliment. So give yourself the option of creating a compliment for your body, something you would love to hear. You could even say it out loud. My body is fresh and joyful. I'm grateful for my practices. Whatever comes to your mind. You can wiggle your toes and your fingers, rotate your ankles, your wrists. Gently let your head rock side to side or make circles. If you did this one in bed, now you'll be ready to get up. If not, try it. Otherwise, I hope you remember throughout the day, whatever time of the day it is, wherever you are, check in with your torso from time to time. If you feel like taking a full body yawn, you can do that. This ability to learn to breathe independently into the left lung and the right lung. And all the things that we find out about ourselves along the way. Some are pleasant and some are not so pleasant. But we meet them all with the same loving kindness. Not always enthusiasm, but in the very least, consideration for yourself and your body. Thanks for joining me today for the slide circles of the girdles. And thank you especially to all my Patreons who sponsor my channel and keep these videos coming. You can join me on Patreon if you'd like. Peace, joy, love, and light.